Hey everybody, this is BSJ, and I actually want to give you guys a slight update to how I believe Slark needs to be played in 7.30E, a new build that I've been trying out that seems to be working a lot better. I've had pretty good results with it. I've played 6 games of Slark this patch, a 4-2 win rate, so not bad, and I also think like the other 2 games were quite winnable. So he feels kind of strong to me, if played properly, so I just want to review exactly like what I think makes Slark strong again.
Banana slam jam.
So the old build for Slark was really focused on Echo Saber being your sole source of mana regen. But what happened was they nerfed the mana regen on Echo Saber and they nerfed the mana cost on Dark Pact. And it made it such that it was quite difficult to sustain mana, and I found myself just dying a lot trying to farm and then eventually joining fights with such low mana that I wouldn't be able to use all my spells. Because while Slark is an agility hero, he has very high mana cost, low cooldown spells, and he usually runs out of mana. So the secret that I found is once the laning stage is over, whether or not you got a really good lane, where you're like level 6 at 6 minutes, or whether or not you had a really bad lane, like in this game, where I'm level 6 at 9 minutes with 3 deaths. The build is Soul Ring, and it makes a lot of sense if you think about the new mana cost on Dark Pact, because Dark Pact is 75 mana, and Soul Ring gives you 150 mana every use, and it lasts for 10 seconds, and the Dark Pact cooldown is less than 10 seconds. It's 9876 for each level. I can use 2 Dark Pacts every time I Soul Ring. And then you also have the innate regen of your ultimate, which counteracts the health loss of the Soul Ring. Pretty much the new build. I've tried it several times now, and it just feels way better. Just to clarify why exactly Soul Ring. Soul Ring has a 25-second cooldown that gives 150 mana, so it's effectively giving you 6 mana regen, which is absurd compared to anything else, and since you also get strength and armor, you're a little bit tankier. Comparing it to early items like Falcon Blade, his sole source of farming is Dark Pact, so he purely relies on the mana component. So Falcon Blade costs 450 gold more, and it only gives less than a third of the effective mana regen of Soul Ring. The Soul Ring timing is when I start jungling. So I want it around level 6, but the second I'm level 7, that's usually the latest that I want Soul Ring, because that's when I'm definitely incorporating jungle camps into my farm. So I want to talk about what makes Slark a good hero this patch, when I like to pick him. So I think what makes Slark a good hero is that if you're snowballing, he's a diffusal hero, meaning you had a really good laning phase, you're free farming, you have this Soul Ring, you're going from lane to jungle, and then suddenly you get this diffusal and you're running at people. But if you're not having a good game, then what makes him good is his Ags. And the reason why is that I'm seeing so many IOs, Tinkers, Storm Spirits, Ember Spirits, all this kind of stuff, a lot of stuns like CKs and Marcies with a lot of chase potential. And I think the mobility of the Ags is really the secret to Slark. So I either go Diffusal if I'm snowballing into Ags, or I just go straight Ags after the Soul Ring. So the thing is, if I think that I can fight with just Ags, I will get the Ags immediately after Soul Ring. But in this game, since I had a really bad game, I'm going to go for a Midas first. And Midas in the past felt pretty rough to me, but now I think Soul Ring plus Midas is a really solid substitute for Echo Saber. The combination of the two is just a little bit more expensive. They're very similar build-ups, but it helps you scale better into the late game. I realized that with the new talents, as well as the new Shard, at least somewhat new Shard, Slark scales way better into the late game than he used to. So I'm building him more as a late gamer. So as you see here, I'm going to be able to regen all the way back to full with my passive, and I'm just not going to run out of mana, as I'm occasionally going to try to participate in fights from afar, but everything I let happen is going to be my team starting it. I'm not the catalyst, guys. If anything happens, it's me joining my team just for some cleanup kills, for some agility. Treat yourself like an anti-mage for the first 15-20 minutes of the game. Your team fight contribution is to show up and steal a kill for the sake of an agi. Soul Ring is just going to pay some massive dividends, as I can use 2 2 Dark Pact charges per big camp. Big note that while you're farming like this, always remember to D-ward. As you see here, it's really important that you don't let them see you. I see that my ult is not activated. Get the D-ward. But I just like to play Slark because I look at games like this where I see a bunch of gap-closing stunners like CK, Marcy, Monkey King, and the Ags makes it near impossible for these heroes to kill you because they jump on top of you with one single stun, and then you disengage and then re-engage. And that's the power of the Ags. It gives you 2 long-range charges on your leap. So I'm going to play mainly away from my team. That's the benefit of Slark. He's a carry somewhat like a Luna, where you want to be farming for the first 15-20 minutes of the game, But instead of farming really, really fast, they just can't kill you. So if my concern about limiting my farm is the opponent heroes trying to run at me and kill me, then I would prioritize Slark over some of these other heavy farmers. And just notice how I'm really never running out of mana as I just spam Dark Pact over and over again for farm with the raindrops plus the Soul Ring. Sometimes I go Sage's Mask. It kind of just depends on the lane matchup, which one of those two I go. And then I queue up the Ags. Bare minimum items before the Ags. I think a nice side note for Slark is that for daytimes, especially early game, I pretty much never play aggressive because one of his best components is the fact that he has 1800 night vision. There's only very few heroes in the Dota game that have this. So Slark is all about picking and choosing your fights. I like to make aggressive moves where I have superior vision at nighttime, even if I'm not that strong. It's a lot about forcing reactions and backing away. So what you're going to see here is where we see two heroes with a ward, we see a Tinker, most likely TP in here, and we're going to chase him around and just look for an opportunity. This is kind of just fishing, you know, lack of a better pun there, and just seeing what happens. And the enemy team is eventually going to commit heroes, and the second that they actually commit more heroes, I'm just dipping. So I never take early 5-on-5s. It's a big deal to avoid those as Slark. Also the best thing about Slark with the Soul Ring, if you're only going to use the Soul Ring to pack the wave once like this, then you can use the remaining 75 mana to get to your next camp faster with the Pounce. In the past, I feel like a really big part of Slark was that my mobility while farming, I'm like an anti-mage that has like a blink that can get places, but it's so expensive mana-wise that I could never use it. So I'm definitely noticing a pretty significant acceleration of my farm by being able to pounce up cliffs like that. For my next camp. So I pretty much never fly myself clarities, but maybe like 1 or 2 a game in the early game. I feel like I have to, like right here, because I fought. But as long as you're not fighting, you do not have to fly yourself clarities. It's pretty much like 1 clarity per fight that you engage in that you have to buy. So what you'll notice about every fight that I show up to is it's either one where the enemy team clearly isn't there, like I started against the Tinker, or it's one where I'm like wrapping around them. And it's already started. So I have all the information in the world. I'm only fighting on wards. If you don't have superior vision in an area on Slark, just don't fight them. His whole kit of disengaging and re-engaging, gaining health from his ultimate is all about the vision. And that's the most important lesson that you can always have. That's always been the same way, but just a reminder. And the Ags is basically saying, I can never die. The biggest counters to Slark right now, in this specific patch to me, are ones that counter the Ags. So I think number 1 would be Bloodseeker. Number 2 would maybe be heroes that have non-dispellable stuns like Faceless Void, Enigma, or Doom. But I think Bloodseeker is by far your worst matchup because you cannot utilize the Ags. The Ags has multiple purposes, and I'll show you exactly what they are. You're pretty much still an anti-mage, and the Midas kind of buys into this. I'm still farming, but now, because I have an Ags, I'm willing to participate. It's similar to the Manta timing of anti-mage. It's like, you're still down to farm, but if stuff happens on the map, you'll probably get involved because you've hit your first big fighting item. So notice how my team's bottom, I've been playing away from them all game, and I'm going to clear this wave top. It's 2034. You can use your Ags to get places faster, as I use it to get away there, and then I'm already going to be mid about 10 seconds later. So your map mobility is pretty insane, as I'm then going to clear this wave and then make my way towards the fight bottom. Similar to Anti-Mage, my farming patterns are going to work towards fights that I'm willing to be a part of. Fight have already broken out. I'm going to show up late. And these are the type of things that you flourish with Slark. If this wasn't a good fight, I would have just headed back mid and cleared the next creep wave. But since I saw something good going on, I show up late, clean up crew extraordinaire, and that's exactly what you want to be doing. So we know the fight's going to continue because the IO had relocate, was going to be coming back from it. But the chase potential of Slark is what I think is amazing, because dealing with these support position defensive heroes like Io, as well as these cores like Tinker, having that gap close is going to come in handy so many times. And then also, you have the ward aspect that you always need to make sure. Tell your supports to buy sentries of your own, play on your own vision advantage like this. You just keep scouting out, let people step away from each other. As Slark, I'm literally got my Shiv waiting for the opponent to not have each other's backs so that I can kill them. If you ever win a fight with Essence Shift stacks, as you see here racking up in the bottom, I will continue to look aggressively on the map. I'm going to play more aggressively based on the fact that I have those Essence Shift stacks. And even though I have virtually no damage items, that's the benefit of this build, is you get to pick and choose your fights. And if you ever do get a beneficial fight, you can keep snowballing it because you have so much damage just from the Essence Shift. We're going to keep going with that snowball. This is something that happens in pretty much every Slark game I've seen and played against so far. So after you get to the Ags, there's kind of like three options after the Ags. One, you go BKB, because to fight them, you absolutely need a BKB, and there's just nothing about it that you can avoid like a Disruptor. The other option would be to go Scotty, which is against heroes that you will catch them, but they're going to stand their ground, like Lunas, Medusas, maybe like an Ursa. A hero that's just going to right-click you a lot, that you are going to eventually fight them. I like to go for the Scotty. If neither of those items feels good, and it's a game of vision, so it's an information game. You want to get the jump before they jump you. I don't want to get stunned by Monkey King into CK stun, into Marcy stun, into Tinker burst. I want to jump them. So if it's a vision game where you're thinking, I want to jump them rather than them jump me, then I go for the Shadow Blade. Everyone loves the Shadow Blade on Slark. And in the past, I felt like I never had enough mana to utilize Shadow Blade on Slark. But now I think I can with just the Soul Ring. Not only does it help me farm in the early game, but it also gives me the mana to continuously play these fights. A lot about Slark, the reason why I don't think this used to work was because when you won that fight bottom and you were farming, you'd be out of mana towards the end of that fight. And so that time that you had 20 Essence Shift stacks, that you were wanting to run around the map and get more kills, you were actually just regenning at base because you just didn't have enough. And also, Ags is a really nice stat item for giving you mana, so it makes the drop item into Wand even more effective. So if you combine a mana regen neutral if possible, the Soul Ring, and then you're going to see me oftentimes drop my Ags just for mana to make use of the Wand. I have a video on that on YouTube as well. I've been fighting consistently, farming consistently, and I'm sitting at half mana. So you're now going to see the next aspect of the Ags. So I saw Tinker TP in top, and now I'm the source of catch for my team while farming. So I'm still farming now, but I'm actually looking to catch people as my chase distance is pretty insane. So I'll be calling out, like, can I get some help? Because usually you don't do enough damage to solo pick off with this build, unless it's like a super squishy support. But with a simple +1, anybody on your team showing up to help you, it will almost always be enough. I always take the Dark Pact talents. I take the agility gain stolen, and then the Essence Shift duration. Those talents are pretty much always the ones I take. They just buy into the build even better. You want to walk as aggressively on the map as possible, and where your eyes need to be is on your ulti buff. Because the second this goes away, you need to press Dark Pact. And then that Dark Pact is going to give you 2.5 seconds to figure out if you want to run away or if you want to like D-ward. But what you do know is they see you. The reason why it's so good to play Slark in this patch with the Ags against no stuns that are undispellable is because now, all of a sudden, if they find me and it's an unfavorable engagement, there's a lot of times where just one pounce isn't enough to get away from people. They'll blink after you and chase you with abilities like Marcy. There's just a lot of mobility in the game right now. So now you'll see so many times where I can just choose to disengage. With pounce, I get to save my ultimate. You're going to see here that I'm always going to try to scout. Ignore the Monkey King tree. That's just lovely replay bug. Still game in beta. I'm going to force out spells, and then I'm just like, peace. Get out of here, boys. Force out spells. So I love playing them against long cooldown heroes like CK that once they pop their spells, they're much weaker. You force them to pop their spells to defend themselves, and then you re-engage. Same thing with Monkey King. Spell popped, disengage. Looking to re-engage. Oh, it's not going to work out. Okay, it's fine. But I still have tons of mana to fight despite spamming pounces. This is the part of the fight that I normally wouldn't be able to rejoin because I wouldn't have any mana. We're going to keep weaving in and out of the fight. And even though this one doesn't necessarily work out, notice how hard it is to kill me as long as I'm able to utilize Dark Pact and Pounce effectively. So once again, we love just forcing out spells. So they're trying to take Roche. We're going to force out a Monkey King ulti, and then we're going to have to dip out. They end up getting it, but the idea remains. You can look to re-engage after their ults are on cooldown. This fight, I misplayed a little bit because they blocked my Pounce on the way out. But not a huge deal. It's still the same idea. I think my mistake this game was that I went full Silver Edge before going for the Ag Shard. I think I should have gone for the Ag Shard after the Shadow Blade. Well known to be a very powerful Ag Shard, but I definitely should have gone it even earlier this game than I anticipated. Because you not only can save yourself, but you can also save your teammates. So once I get this Ag Shard, you'll start seeing the power of that. So my Ag Shard usage tends to be when I have multiple teammates going on somebody at the same time, as you're about to see here. I use my Ag Shard right now. This is when I generally try to use it. That's the best, but if you can use it on one of your teammates if they're getting gone on, or just on yourself when you're fighting someone to the death, those are all acceptable uses as well. But Slark is all about these long fights. Your ulti is low enough cooldown nowadays that you can often prolong these fights to a point where you get 2 ultimates. And because you have the 2 pounce charges, you can oftentimes draw the fight out that long. While it looks like fighting is difficult on Slark, these are pubs, people, even at my level. So these are the plays you have to look for. The fight's over. One person on each team is dead or whatever. People are regrouping. People are trying to split up and farm. This is where Slark flourishes, the split up and farmers. As you see here, they're going to show themselves in lane, and we're just going to jump them. And me being in Shadowblade allows us to scout them out during the smoke without getting revealed. I love playing him with any other hero that jumps in. You can have a Lion, a Void Spirit, really any hero that goes in with you. Because you're so mobile, you don't want to be able to outrun your team because you'll kind of bait them into trying to help you. And you also don't want to be the only one that goes in because you do lack a bit of damage. So I think late game considerations, there's a lot of options for Slark. I think Scotty's really good against any of the tanky carries. I think Basher is really good against any heroes that are going to fight you with BKBs. But then I also think the reason why Slark's even gone up more in value is the buffs to Refresher Orb over time being a much more popular item, and also combining that with the fact that you get a shard. You just have ridiculously long fights. You have the 3 seconds from your shard, the 4.5 seconds from your ultimate, the 6 seconds from your BKB. I mean, it's an 8-second BKB here, but this is like 13 seconds of invulnerability, also 2 pounce charges. So Refresh Orb is just insane for Slark in terms of how long you and your teammates can be invulnerable. So if you're having trouble going high ground against heroes like Tinker, Zeus, for instance, this is like the perfect item because all you have to do is just spend your spells to hit buildings. Gives you also a shit ton of mana regen, so you don't actually have mana problems with the Ags plus Refresher. So since we just took a fight, I tell my team, like, I want to siege high ground with just my spells. We're not actually fighting them. I love Ninja Gear for the smoke aspect of Slark because you can do stuff like this. All about the vision game advantage. But you're just going to see me go in, not really with the intent to kill people. I just use my spells to get racks. And there's very little that can actually defend against this. And because you have 2 pounce charges and 2 ultimates, you can just peace out. And you can rinse and repeat this. So Slark, oddly enough, has become a much better high grounder because of this. And the Refresher also has some bonus synergy with the Midas. Remember that. As I blame the passive Midas on the fact that we're always fighting. So the biggest thing about Slark is his mid to late game items are very similar, other than the Refresher Orb and the Shard, to what they used to always be. But it's the Sol Ring Ags build that I think gets you through the early to mid game. This was a game where I was 0-3, and we still managed to have a really good game, even though it was like pretty close back and forth. In the games where I've had a good start, it's been even more stompy. So definitely try it out, guys. It feels really powerful. Don't fear throwing the Midas in there if you think you want to farm just a bit longer. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed how to build Slark in 7.30e. Thanks for watching.